What's going on, everyone? It is the Conservative Christian coming back at you guys with another video today. So sorry if it's a little bit louder in here today. I've got the air blasting because it's cold outside here in this lovely state that I live in. So this is going to be the part one video to I guess my thoughts on the whole Brett Kavanaugh, Christine Ford situation. I know that I'm out of order when it comes to the order of things that have been going on since I did a Columbus video yesterday, and this whole stuff with Christine Ford and Brett Kavanaugh has been going on for the past couple of weeks. But let's jump into it. So let me just kind of start by prefacing the whole story, and then I'll just kind of give my opinion. I think I'm going to just break this video down since I've come to the realization that this is going to have to be a two-part video because every time I try and record it, it always ends up being super long, and so it usually ends up being like around 40 minutes or so. So what I've decided to kind of just do is I'm going to just take like 20 minutes, the first 20 minutes, to talk about the actual case itself, and then my opinion, and then I'll probably talk about something else that's related to everything that's been going on, some things that I wanted to kind of talk about in light of what's happened with this whole situation. So if for some reason you guys aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, recently there was a man named Brett Kavanaugh who was he's now elected. He was now elected to his seat on the Supreme Court, but whenever he got through a certain like election cycle to get elected in, once he passed a certain part of his election, which was the last one that I think he had to go through before the final vote, this woman named Christine Ford basically came out of nowhere and stated that 35 years ago at a party when they were all minorities, that Brett Kavanaugh sexually assaulted and or tried to rape Christine Ford at some party where he was supposedly drunk to high hell. Now, if you guys aren't familiar with Democrats by now, I should say the left, because there's a difference between the two, as I've explained. Just to re-clarify real fast in case people forgot, the way I kind of define the difference between the left and the Democrats are that the Democrats are the ones who disagree with what you have to say, but they basically aren't jackasses about it. And the left are the ones who are the radicals, who, the people like Antifa, people who actually try and go out of their way to ruin your life, to infringe on your rights, and to basically fundamentally change the structure of the United States as per defined by the Constitution. That's the left, that's the Democrats. For brevity, I say Democrats, the left. I say, sometimes I accidentally do mix the words together, so you can call me out on that if you want to. But they are on the left side, which means that they are essentially Democrats to a degree. So if I say Democrats, I mean left. Anyways, let's keep moving on. So if you've noticed from the left, what they like to do a lot whenever they're losing is to cry and do smear tactics campaigning. The sheer timing of this whole incident with Brett Kavanaugh and Christine Ford was one of the things that initially raised a red flag in my head. Especially after I found out that Christine Ford in the past actually had plenty of chances to come forward with her allegations and actually make something out of this, make an actual court case out of this. Brett Kavanaugh, Republican, for example, he's being accused of sexually assaulting, but how come I never see the left calling out people on their side of the political spectrum for the same thing? Why does the hashtag Believe All Women only apply when it's someone on your side of the aisle? Now, you can ask the same question to me, but my answer is, well, I'm okay with calling someone out, but you have to prove it. And the only difference so far between a lot of the people that have been accused on the Republican side of doing something bad have been proven to be innocent, as far as I know. In fact, back in 1991, if I remember, I saw a video on this. Someone did some research and posted a video. This Brett Kavanaugh situation is almost no different than something that happened to another Republican man running for, I think it was a similar position in office, just 17 years ago. It was the exact same thing. Once he got to a certain point in his election, what did the Democrats do? They came out, they encouraged someone to come forward with rape allegations, with sexual assault allegations, to essentially try and stall the election cycle, or to remove that person from the position so that they can have a seat. We see the Democrats doing this over and over and over again, and on top of that, they're not even consistent with their own story. Again, why do they never call out their own? Because the thing is that I'm more than happy to agree with or call anyone out who's on my side of the political spectrum if you can prove it. And I'm sorry, but allegations of sexual assault from 35 years ago, when both parties were underage, when Christine Ford's story has so many holes in it, when Brett Kavanaugh's testimony and evidence is too strong to indicate otherwise, you can't expect me to just believe that Christine Ford is telling the truth. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the details of that, because that's important in this too. So one of the first inconsistencies that happened with Christine is that her story kept changing. I don't remember the specifics as to what changed exactly, but essentially what it ended up being was that, she would say something, she had something on paper or whatever, and then whenever she was questioned about it, the goalpost would change. The story would just change. And it's not like she would remember the details differently. It's just that she would completely change. She's like, it's not like, are you sure this is blue? This is just an example. This isn't actually something that was asked, but it's just an example. It's like, so was it blue? And she's like, and it's not like, well, it might have been teal or turquoise. No, it's like, oh, well, it might not have been blue. It actually might have been red, now that I think about it. It's not that the details are foggy. It's that the story just keeps changing and holes keep getting poked in it. And that's something that's very concerning to me. Because, look, I get it. There are people out there who, I understand the facts when it comes to people who have been victims of rape or sexual assault. I get that it's, I get that it's a traumatic thing, and it doesn't exactly, it's hard it can be hard for the people to remember the details sometimes, but I found it funny, because here's the thing. When I've been going around talking to a lot of people about this, going to a lot of different threads, and with the exception of a very small few compared to the rest, I've noticed a trend, which is that there's a majority of women out there who are actually admitting online to being victims of rape or sexual assault in the past, and they're actually not taking Christine Ford's side on this. In fact, there was one specific woman who I remember who was brave enough to come forward and say that she was raped a year ago, and she can't even remember all the details from her experience, even though it was only a year ago. And she actually then used that as a springboard to say, and we're supposed to take Christine Ford seriously, that she remembers specifically that it was Brett Kavanaugh. Look, I'm not saying that something didn't happen to Christine Ford 35 years ago at some party. But her entire story supporting that it was specifically Brett Kavanaugh is what I have an issue with. And it's where the evidence does not fall. Okay, as it turns out, every single witness who Christine Ford has brought forward to testify on her behalf, to corroborate the story, they've all denied any recollection or any kind of remembrance of any party that happened 35 years ago. especially one with Brett Kavanaugh, and some of them have even gone as far as to say that Christine Ford didn't know a Brett Kavanaugh when she was in high school. So I'm just saying, I'm basing my opinion on this off of the facts. I don't believe that it was Brett Kavanaugh. I think it's obviously it's possible that something happened to her. But here's my problem with the left, right? Is that you have the land of possibilities, and then you have the land of probabilities. And for some reason, the left likes to live in the land of possibilities. And sometimes I know this can be a hard concept for people to understand. So I'll just kind of try and explain it just in case people aren't quite following what I'm saying. So the definition of possible is that basically that something, there's a chance that something can happen. Anything can happen, pretty much. Whereas a probability is that the likelihood of something specific happening is high. So, for example, a possibility is that while I'm driving down the road right now, a meteorite might come hurling in from the atmosphere and land on my direct location, thus abruptly ending this video that I'm making right now. That is within the realm of possibilities. It is possible for anyone at any given time to be driving down the road and a meteor to come and crash on them. However, the probability, the likelihood of that happening, and specifically happening to me, is extremely low. But the argument here is that because a meteorite could come crashing down, landing at my specific location, crushing me, is a possibility, then therefore we should all just believe that that's reality. So, yeah. So my problem, did I just pass my turn? I hope, no, I didn't. Okay. So it's, they like to live in the land of possibilities because it's more convenient for their argument. It takes a lot more time and effort and investigating to actually be able to prove your claim than it is to just say, well, it could be true, therefore we should just believe that it's true. And I'm sorry, leftists, but that's not how this thing that your mortal enemy is, that's called reality, works. Okay, you don't get to throw people in jail just because you have a suspicion that they have done something wrong. However, that is a step that you have to first acknowledge and get to as part of the process. Like I've said before in the past, there's always a truth in a lie. And so the truth in this statement is that, yeah, you do have to some degree take into consideration certain things as part of but that's only for part of the process. And so this is why we have innocent until proven guilty. You can't ruin someone's life just because someone says that someone else did something to them. Can you imagine what our society would be like if we lived in that world? All it takes is for one woman to say that a man raped her when he didn't, and then a friend of that guy to find out who she was, and then say, well, she stole from me, or she did something, and then so she gets sent off to jail because of that, and then one of her friends finds out what he did, and then she blames him for rape or something. Again, it would just be a never-ending vicious cycle of chaos, and everyone would be finding an excuse to imprison and jail anyone for any reason that they can't substantiate or prove. This is why we have innocent until proven guilty. And if you actually are someone out there who thinks that a woman can't lie, or that just because it's hard for women to come forward on these allegations, that every single one who comes forward must be telling the truth because of how hard it is, you are incorrect. Because I've heard a lot of stories, and a lot of them have been proven to be true, that the woman was lying. One of them being a case involving one of my best friends. One of my friends was in a training for the military, after the one that comes after basic training, the one where you learn about your specific job, and if I remember the details correctly, there was someone who accused him of it was either sexual assault or raping her, and because of her, my friend got held up in his training for a year while this whole thing was being investigated, when he should have been out of there months prior. And on top of that, now he has, even though this wasn't supposed to follow him to his next base, it somehow did. And as it turns out, the woman, I believe, was lying because she got orders to a base that she didn't want to go to, and my friend just happened to be the nearest scapegoat for her. And you really want to sit here and tell me that just because it's hard for a woman to come forward, that means that they're all telling the truth anytime a woman comes forward with these allegations?